Well, welcome everyone on this, well, at least cloudy Wednesday where I am. We're excited to have you here. And I guess the cloudiness makes it a little easier to be inside. Those are some gorgeous fall days we were having. We will do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll have our presentation. There'll be plenty of time for questions and answers and discussion. And then we'll do what we like to call our carpool conversations. So we'll break people up into breakout rooms and invite you to introduce yourselves to one another and reflect a little bit on what you've heard and any thoughts you have on how you'll take action on it. So I wanted to start off by introducing myself and what the learning community is. So I'm Zoe Miller and I'm the executive director with the Moving Maine Network. I use she, her, they pronouns, and we will forego a full group round of intros today because we have kind of crossed that threshold of taking up too much time to do that. I would invite people to use the chat to put in your name, the hat or hats you're wearing that bring you to the Moving Maine table. And that way folks can get to know who all is here. We do ask folks to not use the chat much during the session because it makes it more accessible for folks who are using a screen reader. And just a word on accessibility, that we do have a real person doing captioning, and we will be happy to send out a copy of the slides and the text accompaniment to the slides after today's session. We will be posting the recording of this session to our YouTube channel with notes available there. So our learning community sessions are first and foremost about building community amongst the folks who care about mobility and access here in Maine and beyond. And what we hope that folks will do is learn something from one another and be inspired to take action. We really believe that building relationships is a type of infrastructure, and that the more people know each other and know who's doing what and who cares about what, that we can make strides on access and mobility here in Maine. So thank you for coming and being a part of that. We recognize that it is the lunchtime hour, and so if you need to be off camera or for any eating or any other reason, feel free. But we do invite people to come on camera. This is less of a webinar and more of an opportunity to be in community with people. So just want to put that out there. We will have time towards the end to share information. So I would invite you, if you have something, an event, a resource, something that you want to share towards the end, to think about that. And there'll be a point towards the end when we invite you to put that in the chat. But again, just for those who just joined, we will go light on using the chat, except for introducing yourself. So we have, as you know, the topic for today is, so you want to start a volunteer driver program. We are really excited to have Patricia Oh here to talk about that. We've had numerous conversations in our mobility action meetups and previous learning communities where people have said, I really think my community could use a volunteer driver program. And so we figured it would be good to bring us all back together to have the conversation in a learning community session where it's recorded, so Patricia Oh can share the latest on what her organization is doing around this. I think many of you already know Patricia. She's currently the Assistant Director of Community Research at the UMaine Center on Aging. And in that role, she has the honor and joy of supporting Lifelong Maine's age-friendly communities. I will turn it over to Patricia to say more about herself if she chooses, and then to jump right into the content. So thank you so much for being here, Patricia, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Zoe. I am going to share screen first, and then Have to say, it's a little intimidating to present to this group because I see some real experts in the room. Um, Hillary leads a very successful volunteer transportation program in the Sacapee Valley. And there are others, there are a lot of you here who have a lot of experience. Catherine Freund is here. So if I mess up, please, Hillary and Catherine and anyone else who's leading a program, feel free to correct me or to add your comments, clarifying comments. I'm always happy for that. So thank you for inviting me to share just a little bit about the resources that Lifelong Maine offers grassroots volunteer transportation programs. As you already heard, my name is Patricia Oh. And as part of my work at the UMaine Center on Aging, I work with our partners as well. I work with Aging Maine GWEP, the Geriatric Workforce Enhancement Program, with ARP Maine and with CAPRA. They are all integral to us being able to offer resources and support for communities who are starting volunteer transportation programs. And this is what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what an age-friendly community is. Then I'm going to talk about Lifelong Maine volunteer transportation, the resources that we are able to offer to communities. And then I'm going to share a story that is not my story, but is the story of age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec. We were hoping that one of them would be able to join us today, but they weren't. They very generously shared their notes, and I've also been a little bit of a part of their journey. So I'll be talking a little bit about how they did it, how they got started, and how they're knocking it out of the park. First of all, for age-friendly communities, we currently have 105 communities in the state of Maine that are members of the ARP network. We are all different, but we have a shared mission, which is for communities where everyone can lead active, healthy, and engaged lives throughout their lifetime. And if you're interested in learning more about those communities, please check out our website, www.lifelongmaine.org. Now, I know that a lot of you are off camera, so it's kind of hard to answer this question, but how many of you are part of an age-friendly community? I see you, Hillary. Are there others? All right, Terry, welcome. Okay, great. So I feel like I'm talking to people who already know the topic. That's good. And I know Catherine is very familiar with our work. Basically, in a nutshell, these are the resources that Lifelong Maine offers. We do have a product, well, we do have a page where it points to various volunteer transportation programs. It's a find a ride that you can, all that you have to do is you just put in the name of the region and then it'll pop up with a few different options for volunteer transportation programs. Catherine, I know we're not supposed to use the chat, but could you put your Rides in Sight link as well in there in the chat, please? For people who, we actually include the Rides in Sight as one of the resources on that page so that if people don't find a volunteer transportation program in their area, there are some other resources on our page. And one of the ones that we really like to highlight is the Rides in Sight. We have a training manual. So when you're getting started on your age-friendly journey, age-friendly volunteer transportation journey, it can be a little intimidating. You know, where are you going to get your forms? What are your procedures? How do you vet volunteers? What do you? We had somebody named Mary Beth Paquette, who was the executive director of Neighbors Driving Neighbor, put together a training manual based on her experience leading a large volunteer transportation network. The manual is online, but it's also downloadable. If you need a printed copy, just reach out. We're happy to send you one. And then we also offer ongoing resources for communities that have volunteer transportation programs. We offer the excess liability insurance to all of our programs, which means that their drivers are covered by excess liability. So their first, when a person is driving in a volunteer transportation program, their own personal insurance is the first insurance that they'll be used. But if the problem goes beyond what their personal insurance covers, that excess liability insurance will help them. For a lot of volunteer drivers, that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that they do have that coverage. We also have access to the assisted ride software, which is available for free to all of the communities. Most importantly, are the peers. We conduct occasional meetings for people who are using the software, for volunteer drivers, so that they can share ideas and they can talk about, all the fun and exciting things that can go along with being a volunteer transportation program. And this is what the site looks like when you get there. If you go to www.lifelongmaine.org/resources/volunteer transport, you get to a page where you can either click on the search for programs serving your community or the volunteer transportation manual and the other resources that you need. That map shows all of the current grassroots volunteer transportation programs in the state of Maine. And now I'm going to tell the really important story, which has which has a little bit to do with Lifelong Maine because we have been supporting this initiative. This is a new volunteer transportation program that was developed in a 5-community region. The team launched their program a little bit more than a year ago. They spent quite a bit of time developing policies and procedures that would work in their region of Maine. This was their steering committee. As always, it takes a village to do this work. One person alone is going to have a hard time starting a volunteer transportation program. As you can see from the list, their partners included Age Friendly Georgetown, Bath Housing, Maine Health, Morse High School, Public Health, Residents, Search, Selectmen, Sheriff, YMCA, you name it. It was a large group of partners. You can also see that they were having fun when they were working together. And I think that that's important. When you're starting out a volunteer transportation program, I think it's important to keep it fun for the steering committee because it's a lot of work. And so at least letting people have or encouraging people to have fun in the meetings can be helpful. Their area actually includes 110 square miles, but the total population is only about 17,500. It's quite a diverse area. Coming up, I have a map, as you can see here. Not an easy area to serve. It can be quite a distance if you're going from the edge of Georgetown to the edge of Phippsburg. The communities that are included in their program are Arousik and Bath, Georgetown and Phippsburg, West Bath and Woolwich. They have quite a range. The communities are not the same at all. For example, Arousik only has 477 residents, whereas Bath has 8,766. Bath does have some public transportation. The other communities do not. And this is how they got started. They started out by doing an age-friendly assessment. They had 1,000 responses throughout the region. And to get around 91% of drivers reported that they drove themselves. 38% completely disagreed that it would be easy to find a ride. So people were indicating that if they couldn't drive, it would be difficult to find a ride. And if it's hard to get to the places, why? They asked in the survey. And the question, of course, was the lack of transportation. What we know is if people don't have options, they'll continue driving even when it isn't safe to drive. So having that option is really important. We also know that without rides, people can miss appointments, they can skip meals, they lose touch with their community. So having a volunteer driver transportation program's an important thing, especially in rural areas. So initially they decided, you know what, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We are going to partner with another group that's doing this work. So in 2019, Age Friendly Georgetown reached out to People Plus to see if they could coordinate their work so they would have a volunteer transportation program in the Georgetown region, but it would be administered by People Plus. That model is still working in Harpswell, which is not that close to Bath, but it is working in Harpswell. It is working in Bath. Has not really worked well in the other communities. And one of the reasons is that it really is outside of the People Plus catchment area. So they didn't have the name recognition to be able to recruit the volunteers that they needed. And I think that was basically it. You know, if you only have a few drivers who are signed up, then you're not going to be able to meet the needs of everybody in 5 communities, and in sort of in the proverbial nutshell there. But that experience really did teach the team a lot. They learned from People Plus about some of the policies and procedures they would need to have in place. And they learned that doing a full regional approach maybe wasn't the best way to do it, because do you want to have a driver from Phippsburg who's going to be providing rides for somebody in Georgetown? And so they came up with their own model, and I'll talk about that in a second. Oh, the other thing that they said that they really gained, by the way, from their experience with People Plus was experience providing the rides for those drivers, but also using the software because they had access to software. So age-friendly community of the Lower Kennebec, part of their vision is in our communities, people of all ages will be able to get easily to the places they want to go. Their goal is a network of volunteer transportation programs driven by committed volunteers in each town. As I already mentioned, they've only been up and running for a little bit more than a year. They started in June of 24. In January of this year, they had their first training for 13 drivers. As of September 25th, they have 26 drivers active in the 5 communities. They have 18 riders. They've done 47 round trips, 2,400 miles driven total. And what they have done is they have sort of a hub and spoke model. They have a volunteer coordinator who is Karen, who's the person who put together this presentation, by the way, and I will be giving you her contact information, and Jim Peavy. Those were the two that were primarily the ones who are coordinating the policies, the procedures. They're acting as that hub. But then in each community, they have somebody that they're calling a community champion. That is the person who, if you want to ride, if you live in Georgetown and you want to ride in Georgetown, you call the Georgetown coordinator. The Georgetown coordinator is also out there recruiting drivers. I actually think that it's one of the reasons that they've been as successful as they have been, because they really emphasize these are neighbors giving rides to neighbors. And what they do for each community is they provide the program description, the administrator job description, which is that champion person that I just described. They have the application form so that this champion is well equipped to be able to work in her or his own community. And then the University of Maine does provide their background checks for them and the umbrella insurance and access to the insurance. These are their champions. Now, doesn't this look like a great group of people that you'd want to hang out with? They started with the handbook on the Lifelong Maine website, and then they looked at various transportation programs across Maine to develop their own initial documents that are based on those templates. So they aren't using just our volunteer transportation manual. They have taken the time to customize it for their own needs. The steering committee weighed in, and the team edited it and edited it and edited it. It was a long process to get to the final version of the documents that they have. They spent time discussing implications of gathering a lot of personal information from people, from both riders and drivers. That was one of the key concerns of that group. And so now, after a new applicant's information is entered into the electronic system, it is shredded. They also, before they deploy a champion, before they have a champion who's actually out there recruiting drivers and riders, they make sure that they have met with the municipal leaders. Usually in these small towns, it's with the select board. They think it's important to make sure that the town is aware of what they're doing and that the town is supportive of it. Then they developed the toolbox, which I sort of showed you on that last slide where there was a list, there was the program description and the administrator's job description, all of that. And then, as I mentioned, this picture shows the champions. In Georgetown and Woolwich, the program is fully up and running a little bit more than a year into it. In Woolwich, it's growing very quickly, very, very quickly, I would say. Phippsburg is just starting. I think they have 3 drivers now. And Arousik has actually recruited 6 drivers. Their only problem in Arousik is that they haven't really been able to recruit riders. They have 1 rider who still drives most days, so they haven't given as many rides in Arousik. And in Bath and West Bath, they are working to potentially get it started. The needs are a little bit different in Bath because there is that public transportation system. So they have a little bit they want you to understand who their coordinators are. So in Georgetown, Jim, who I think is probably the man in the blue shirt on the edge there, he wears many hats and he acts as the ride coordinator in Georgetown. It's now part of the regional program, and they have 7 drivers and 7 riders in, yeah, that's still what they have. That's what they had in June, and that's still what they have. Marla, who is, I actually don't see her in the picture, in Woolwich, she found Jen, who is their ride coordinator in Woolwich. Marla volunteers as a driver. She's also the head of marketing. And as a result, they have a lot of good, strong support in Woolwich. It's the fastest growing riding program that they have in the region, with 8 drivers and 8 riders. And then Susan actually moved to Phippsburg from away. Can you imagine coming from away and still being brave enough to say, yes, I will champion this. I will work with you to get this going. She joined town committees. She works with a faith community. She's the interim ride coordinator. I bet that'll last for a while. And they have already had something like 12 rides in Phippsburg. So it's pretty exciting to see the way that each community in this network has grown at its own pace. There. To promote the program, the age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec needed a tagline. The first choice was essential rides for everyday living, and the second choice that they had was where every ride and everyone matters. Both emphasize the importance of inclusiveness, so guess what? They use both of them. Age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec is committed to providing essential transportation services that accommodate the needs of older adults who have no other means of transportation without age restrictions. That way, nobody's getting carded when they call. And these are their communication channels. Sometimes it can be hard to get word out about a brand new program. These are just a few of the methods that age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec has used to get word out. In Woolwich, the select board supported the AFCLK by including a short announcement in the tax bill. A wonderful way to get the word out. The mailing reached about 1,700 taxpayers. All of the steering members talk about the program at events, at town meetings, in the Arousik newsletter, and in other of the local newsletters, on their websites, emails, social media, you name it, they're over it. And then the team also developed these really cool postcards that they hand out to people. They're a little bit bigger than a business card. This is what they look like. They're a little bit bigger than a business card. They give just the bare information. It's not a full brochure. It is a handout card. They give them to EMS to share with people who might be calling EMS. They leave them at the fire department. They leave them at the different town offices, as well as doctors' offices, and even the veterinarian in Woolwich. In addition, they are listed in various transportation directories. Hopefully they are also listed in Rides in Sight. Now we have a homework assignment for Catherine, which always excites me to give Catherine a homework assignment. I will say one thing, one last minute on the postcard. They have really seen a lot of traction with that postcard. I think it's something about the size. It's easy to hand out. People take it more than when they were trying with a brochure. So that really has worked. And then they wanted to make sure that I told you about what really works. Now, Karen herself, by the way, wanted to share what works. Remember, let's not forget that there's a real benefit for the volunteers as well as for the riders. And so for her, a person who moved from away to Arousik. She moved from well away. She moved from Germany to Arousik, so it was quite a destination there. And what has kept her going is the personal connection to her people in the transportation subcommittee. It's been a wonderful experience for her, and it recharges her batteries. Again, you see a picture of them really enjoying each other. The volunteer coordinators for each town work as a team. They emphasize that. Many of the drivers are already neighbors and friends. So again, you get that teamwork is the dream work thing, especially at that neighborhood level. And she thinks that one of the reasons that it really has taken off in their area is emphasizing getting neighbors to where they need to go as the purpose for the program. And they are very grateful for all the support that they've gotten in the community, the local champions, the mover shakers, the town officials, the police department, all of that. As I mentioned, all those partners at the beginning. This is the contact information for Karen. I think it will be included in the email that will follow up with this, because it's probably more important for you to be able to reach Karen than for you to be able to reach me. If you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or would like more information, anything at all that we can do to help, please don't be shy. Email me, patricia.oh@maine.edu. Thanks.
Great. That was great, Patricia. I love seeing the photos of people having community as they're making something great happen for their community. So we would love to open it up to any questions or comments that people have. Seems like we're a manageable size group, so if people want to jump in and just come off mute and ask a question, and if it gets unwieldy, I'll get us under control. But yeah, who has a question or a comment that they want to share?
I'm curious about the communication methods for the coordinators. Do they, when they get the request for a ride, how does that get sent out to the drivers?
That's an excellent question. They are using the assisted ride software. So in their particular case, the drivers have access to a list of needed rides, and then the drivers can sign up for the rides that they have the time to be able to fill. And then the coordinators also will usually send out, well, not usually, do send out the week before, if there are some rides that have been unfilled, they'll send a note to all their drivers saying, you know, just FYI, these rides have not been filled yet.
I'm from Lincoln County Fish, going 10 years now. And we do everything by email. We don't use a service. So we use Google basically spreadsheet format. And again, it works perfectly to have the drivers decide what they could do. So we don't get burnout. It means that sometimes people don't get rides, which is a problem. So we can always use more drivers, but I'm just interested in how other people are working. I like the focus on individual towns, but we don't have that luxury, really. Some of our towns only have one or two drivers, and anyway, it just, whatever, but.
I will say that one of the hard things, and then I'm going to actually ask Hillary to talk about how they connect with their drivers. But one of the hard choices that age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec had to make at the beginning, because they were committed to this hub and spoke model, they didn't offer the service in a community until they had that champion. And that was it was a painful decision for them to make. It's worked out, but it was, except for with West Bath. You'll notice there still is not really a service in West Bath. And then Hillary, how do you contact with your.
Well, we're supposed to be using the assisted ride software, but I'm not. I started trying to, but life just kept catching. I just had to catch up with real life and continue doing what I had been doing. We actually, I've been coordinating our transporters for probably 5 years, but we existed before, even before that, um, as a small group. Initially providing rides for ourselves in the Grateful Undead group, which is the five Sacabee Valley towns, Porter, Parsonsfield, Cornish, Baldwin. Um, no, I'm not in the Sacabee Valley towns. I'm in Newfield. I've missed one somewhere in there. Oh, Hiram. Um, so we've kind of just grown, and we now have about 20. I have 26 volunteers, uh, at least that on the list, but really only about six are truly active, and maybe another six are somewhat active. Um, so it is somewhat of a struggle to make sure we get everybody a ride. And our rides are only for medical appointments, and we've expanded to picking up prescriptions and delivering them from one particular pharmacy in Cornish. Um, and we do get asked for trips to buy groceries, but I just can't afford to do that with a limited number of volunteers. However, on the way home, people often do stop at the grocery store and let people pick up groceries because that's a real need. Um, so yes, we communicate by email, and I do keep my records on a spreadsheet, but I also have just sort of forms that I can fill out quickly when I get a phone call or an email, um, and then enter into the system. Um, we also ask for drivers to send in a quick trip report, so we can, it's an easy way for me to check that a trip actually happened, because sometimes it doesn't. We can't find a driver, or the client had to cancel the appointment or something. We aren't particularly organized by towns, but I really am paying a lot of attention to the kinds of outreach that were done and the partners in the town. We have relationships uh, with the select boards and medical center, the health center and so forth, um, but not specifically as part of the transporters, because the Grateful Undead does other community activities. So we do share with a lot of our other community people about those. Um, what else am I thinking? Um, I've been taking, well, I'm going to have to listen and watch again, because I was taking copious notes and thinking I've got to pick on some of these hot tips and involve more of the community people in knowing what we do. But to tell the truth, I'm afraid of too much publicity until I have more truly active volunteers. And we are finally having a volunteer appreciation time. We're having a party on in late October that will be the day of the day of the undead, because we're the Grateful Undead. Um, And so we will have our volunteers and our community friends to celebrate those volunteers. Um, what else? I'm trying to think what else.
So Hillary, I see that Terry and Catherine have their hands up, so maybe we can go to them, and then if you have additional thoughts.
That's fine.
But it's great to have you here and here. I think it sounds like there's so much variety in how programs function, and I think that's so important because all our communities are a little different. So Terry, we'll go to you, and then Catherine. And we have about, let's see, we have until 12:45 for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Zoe. For those of you I haven't met yet, very nice to be on this call. As usual, I see some experts in the room, like it was mentioned earlier. So my name is Terry Palmer. I'm the statewide mobility manager for the state of New Hampshire. And we're also having a celebration day for our volunteer driver programs in the state. One of the topics that has come up, and I was really happy to hear that you guys were doing this volunteer driver kind of get together. We have some volunteer driver programs that they may have 40, 50, 100 registered drivers, but we're seeing a lot of inactive drivers. How is this group either re-engaging with their drivers, or how are you keeping them engaged?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that for age-friendly communities of the Lower Kennebec, that's not really much of an issue yet because it's been a year. What I see, because we do all the background checks and we offer the insurance, so I get to see when people come on and off lists. Sometimes people go inactive. By making it possible for people to go inactive for a specific period of time, it seems like they're then more likely to come back. So when I look at the different communities, the ones who say, this person's going to Florida for 4 months, so is going to be inactive, so don't cover them with the insurance for that 4 months.
Oh,
Those people will then come back. But then with other communities where they just say, okay, we're knocking them off the list, they don't tend to come back. So I'm not sure. My suspicion is that those communities that are saying you're going on pause are then reaching out to them when they come back to sort of re-engage.
uh-huh.
And it can be for physical reasons. I mean, it can be a number of reasons why people might.
And that's one of the things that we're hearing as well. We have some of our snowbirds that are getting ready to leave for the winter. And it seems like a lot of our volunteer driver coordinators are very active with their drivers, right? So they're calling them and asking them, hey, you haven't picked up a trip in a few months. Is everything okay? Are you having car trouble? All of those things. And some of them are just saying, well, I just haven't had the time, or they don't want to take the time. So we're trying to figure out a way to keep it positive and keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to Catherine and then Timothy. Oh, Catherine, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm back. I loved your case study of the work, all the people working together and personalizing for their community all of the materials. It just brings home how important it is for volunteer transportation to be connected to the local community by the people of the local community. I want to make an offer to all of the providers who are represented here. As you know, Patricia, because you helped us with letters of support, we have been working for 2 years on the issue of insufficient volunteers. While every community is absolutely different, every community is actually struggling with the same issues. So you can be different and the same at the same time. We have been planning America's Volunteer Driver Center, and it's a national public information campaign to change the way people think about and support transportation for our aging population. In general, when people think about volunteering, they think about homeless shelters, they think about food banks, they think about the environment, they think about their children's schools, they think about the Red Cross. They do not think about driving older people. So we need to sort of open up the way people think about this across the country. So we have been planning that with a number of people and a number of organizations from all over the country, businesses, states. The CDC has been working with us. The Federal Transit Administration has been working with us. Long story short, There's a website. Your participation in this, if you are interested, is 100% free. We know you don't have money. We know it. So the first providers are going to be signing on starting in October. We're already working with several transit agencies in Maine, but it is my heart's desire to work with the small nonprofits who really depend on the volunteers. So if I can have permission to put one more thing in the chat, I'll give you the website. We will reach out to you probably later in October, and what we are doing is signing up the providers first, and the campaign to recruit the volunteers will be launched in 2026. But because we had support for this effort from our senators, I promised them, and I keep my promises, I promised them that we would test all of our volunteer recruitment messages with the providers in Maine. So we would highly value your input in this process. As a provider and as a person who is in a perfect position to judge whether the messages make sense, whether they resonate, whether they are helping you. So I'll put that website in the chat. And then also, our annual meeting is free. It is open to you. And the date for that is November 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I'll put that in the chat as well. And if you have any questions, I can put my email to it if that's okay. But I think you're all doing, I think you're all the salt of the earth. That's what I think. It's wonderful work. I've been volunteering to drive now. I think I've done 3,000 rides at this point. I've been volunteering to drive for 30 years. Currently, I only drive one person. She is 99. I take her to church on Sunday. She has been riding with us for 26 years. And she is the volunteer who folds our statements every month for us and has done it for about 10 years. She's absolutely wonderful. She's my hero. Okay, I'm done. I'll put this in the chat, and welcome, welcome, welcome if you want to work with us.
Thank you, Catherine. So let's, Timothy, if you still want, we can squeeze you in with a question or comment, if you would still like to add something.
Sure. So I'll start off. My name is Timothy Large. I'm with Penquist Transportation Brokerage. I'm the provider compliance coordinator for our volunteer group. We currently have about 120 to 115 active volunteers. To kind of answer on what Terry was reaching about is those inactive volunteers. Just my experience in the past has been to just keep consistent contact with those volunteers as much as possible. Outreach is a huge thing. And also, that personal contact with a volunteer, knowing a little bit about them, whether it be, their daughter, their granddaughter, their family members, things like that, being able to talk with them on a personal basis, not just about the business at hand, but being able to have, some type of personal contact with them, knowing that, that volunteer goes down to Florida and they're on the west side of Florida, that kind of thing, or they're going down to North Carolina. It's those small outreaches that really make a huge difference overall as far as keeping and retaining volunteers. Also, another big thing is being a big advocate for them as far as burnout is concerned. I know that a lot of volunteers, they feel that if they're not volunteering, they're not helping. No, you can't help anyone else unless you help yourself first. Make sure that you're taken care of, make sure that you're well, make sure that all the things are in place for you to be able to help out and volunteer. Take care of that first.
Thanks, Timothy. Great. So, well, thank you so much, Patricia, and everyone who commented. Obviously, this is a really important topic on how we, how we keep solving the mobility challenges for our communities. So I anticipate we'll continue to talk about it. And thank you, Catherine, for sharing that info. We'd be happy to share that again with the larger network too. So